Hey guys, I'm Kate. Welcome back to my channel. And a while ago, I had a survey called Your Writing Experience and Goals, and a bunch of you filled out the survey. We went through all these really cool stats. It was awesome. But there was one final little section at the very end that you didn't have to fill out, but was basically like, if you could ask your fellow writers any one question, what would it be? And I got over 719 responses to that. Similarly, I had a Patreon questionnaire recently, which was like creativity and money. And again, I had a little question at the very end, which is like, what would you ask fellow writers? What would you ask me? And I got over 80 questions. So I've been just kind of wanting to go through these. So this is like sort of Q&A, but also what I really want from this is for in the comments down below y'all to answer these questions too. So I have 10 questions this time. I think they're going to be really fun. But before we get started on that, I do also want to say that this video is being sponsored by Skillshare, so I will talk about them a little bit later on in the video. But without further ado, let's get to the first question, shall we? And this is a doozy. This is why I thought we should start out with this one. Because I got a bunch of different iterations of this question, which was basically like, how do you shelve your passion projects that you know are never going to, in quotes, make it, but that constantly invade your mind? A kind of bonus version of this that I got from Patreon is, how do you stop the looming specter of, I must make money from this or it's a wasted effort, from encroaching on spontaneous experiments? So basically like, what do you do when some of the writing or projects that you would love to work on, you know, aren't going to be commercially viable? But of course you want to publish or you want to be read, and sometimes that means you have to be commercially viable. And how do you balance those things? And let me take a sip. This is a question that I've been asking myself a lot as I have come up with a sort of pseudo publishing timeline schedule for my multiple pen names. And this has been the year of finishing for me, right? So I've been trying to finish the Meridian maps. I've been trying to finish some of these romance projects that I've been working on, and I'm not considering any of the fun, crazy ideas I had. Like, that's just point blank. That's not what I'm doing this year, even though it's the year of finishing. And even though some of those stories I'd started, like freaking Scooby-Doo Meets the Princess Bride, I started forever ago. You know, I'm not taking the time this year. That's not what this year is. But how do you balance that, right? So I like to think of it as a temporary shelving. This is not a permanent shelving. I'm going to come back to these projects like Warlocks on the Boardwalk. I actually have like a fun hint at that project and the short story collab thing I've been working on. So it's not completely gone this year, but it's definitely been shuffled to the back. It is on the back burner, which is how I've been thinking of some of these projects are just back burner projects. That doesn't mean they're permanently shelved. That doesn't mean they're thrown into the fire. But even then, I think I just decided this year was the year I wanted to start making money from my fiction work. And because I wanted to make money from my fiction work, I knew I needed to do the ones that were, in theory, the most likely to make me money, hence why I'm trying to get that romance pen name really sorted out and why I'm trying to do the Meridian maps, the YA fantasy 5-book series that I've been working on for so long, because I think that they're commercially viable in their own ways. Whereas, as much as I love Scooby-Doo Meets the Princess Bride and my Warlocks on the Boardwalk, I can accept that those are much smaller markets. They might be very dedicated markets. Like, I could get this completely wrong. Like, those might be way more successful and I just don't know it. But I do think that those are significantly smaller markets. Like my freaking cult school project that I want to do that I outlined during a Write Anything Day. Like, it would be awesome. It would be awesome. I have no idea of how awesome it could be. But right now, it's just not this year. So as for an answer to this, I think it's important to work on the projects that you may think will never make it. You know, how many stories have we read that those authors didn't think were gonna make it necessarily, or the ones that ended up being super popular? You know, the cult classics that we think of were disregarded at the time, were potentially passion projects for those creators, and now we love them. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no telling. But sometimes it's okay for something not to make it, in quotes, or sometimes it's okay to put something out there for free or do something on like a serial or weekly basis just for fun, just as an outlet for you. But I recognize that striking that balance is very hard and I'm still struggling with it myself. So again, the goal is for y'all to comment down below and let me know how y'all handle that balance. I would be so curious. Or if you have a little bit more experience with either publishing or putting your work out there, not necessarily in the traditional way, just kind of whatever way, maybe even in the fan fiction world. Like, have you written something that you considered a passion project that you didn't think would make it, that you didn't think would be successful, and you had like an actual switcheroo where that one was the more successful project ultimately? I'd be very curious. But I said we were starting with the tricky ones. Or at least some of the tricky ones, because there are more tricky ones to come. But the Patreon question of basically how do you keep from monetizing everything is another one that I personally struggle with. Once I quit my corporate job, you know, and this idea of working for myself in a creative capacity really came to fruition. It's hard. It's hard because I'm of the opinion now that I want to make the thing. And if I get money from it, cool. So that's kind of how I've been feeling about it. Like, I'm gonna put this out there, and if anyone wants to pay for it, cool. If you don't want to pay for it, that's also cool. It's that kind of thing. But it's hard. Like, why do I need to do that? And also, at what point am I recognizing that I think this thing probably has a bigger dollar potential, so I'm going to prioritize that one, even if it's not necessarily the thing of my heart versus this other stuff, you know what I'm saying? Or how do you learn to have a hobby that's just for you? You know, like an example of this would be I like to bake a lot. I have never sold my baked goods or anything like that. Like, that's just fun and it's just for me trying new recipes. But of course I've made blog posts about it and I include it in videos and I had it as part of like Twitch Controls My Writing Vlog Day. In that capacity, I have almost monetized it too. So I don't know. Oh, hi Buffy. Bye, Buffy. I think in some ways, honestly, having this channel and just doing the crazy writing experiments that I want to do has, I don't necessarily helped that problem, but I find a freedom in, like, even if this ends up being not as beneficial to me as I hoped, I get to share that with people, and then that video itself can make money, and I like editing it. So even if, again, the experiment was a bit of a failure, like, it was a learned experience and, you know, I might make 20 bucks or something for the video. I actually think that's counter to what the question's asking, but I don't know that it has stopped my experimentation at all. If anything, it's encouraged it. I don't know. This is a hard one. Please help me down below.
What is it, Zelda? Oh. Good job, Abby.
Good job. This next question asks, feasibly and candidly, how many hours a day do you write? And I'd actually be so curious. Also, if y'all could let me know not only how many hours a day do y'all write, or maybe potentially how many hours a week do y'all write, but are you working a part-time job, full-time job? Are you a student? Do you have children? Do you have a significant other that you're caring for? You know, I'm just kind of curious. For me though, this is actually part of an experiment that I will be working on this coming week. I will let y'all know about 2 days worth this week at the very end of the video, and then be on the lookout for my experiment, my kind of time tracking experiment that I want to attempt again. Yes. This next question asks, why do you want to be published? So I'm actually going to leave a poll up on one of these sides of the screen. I'd love if you would take it. So the possibilities that this person gave were fame, money, success, or something to say. If this was a multiple choice question, like I'm gonna make y'all do, I think I'd be in between money and something to say. Now, money is a hard one because with the exception of a few people, making money from your writing is tremendously hard. Like, you know, the people that we're seeing are the 1% of the 1% that are making a whole lot of money from their writing. That's not to say that people can't make a, you know, semi-livable wage. It's not to say that people can't make, you know, a part-time income from their writing or anything like that. So I'm not trying to discourage, but it is worth mentioning, obviously, that of the people who try to publish books each year, of the people who try to publish articles or try to start a blog or something, you know, we're only seeing a very few number that are actually making consistent income from that sort of thing. So to say that the goal is to make money seems kind of silly. Success is a confusing category all in itself, so I don't even want to touch that. I have a lot of mixed feelings about success as someone who was like a relatively good student and graduated from college early and was on the like successful career track that a lot of people see, then to quit that and kind of be floating for a couple of years. I've seen, you know, multiple sides of what people tend to think of as success, and I have a complicated personal history and feelings with it. So I feel like it has to be something to say. It's really like I just want to tell stories for past me, for current me, for future me, and hope that, you know, people will appreciate them too and love them as much as I do. There's something egotistical in that as well. But you know what? I've just accepted that, you know, at some point. You know, ego isn't everything. I also don't think there's anything wrong with dreaming of being a famous author or dreaming of getting rich from your writing or wanting to be the idealized version of a writer that we typically see as successful. I would say that I think most writers have something they want to say. You don't get into writing. It's such a time-consuming activity. You don't do that unless you genuinely believe you have something you want to say, whether that's to the masses or whether it's just to a version of yourself. This next question scares me because I wonder how you got yourself into this situation, even this hypothetical situation. Like, why? They're asking, if you only had 3 days to write 80,000 words, how would you do it? Short answer, I wouldn't. I don't know the most I've ever written in 3 days. If you know off the top of your head how many words you've written in 3 days, comment down below. I think I would cry. Okay, no, if I'm taking this seriously, how would I do it? I don't know that I could. In theory, I would already pick a project that I know a lot about or multiple projects that I could do the beginnings of because I'm really good at the beginning. So I think I could probably get 10,000 words into multiple projects and get them that way. Or do a couple of like romance novellas and attempt it. Maybe a few first drafts of short stories. So that's what we're working with. I'm not going to try and sort out any big overarching plots. I'm not going to try and sort out the middle of anything too heavily. That would be step 1 of my process. Step 2, lower my expectations. Step 3, I work best in the morning. I think I would set an alarm for 5 and I would work 5 to 8, get as many words as I could. Exercise for a bit, turn back to the computer 9:30, do another like 2-hour, 3-hour chunk, go for a long walk, listen to some music, not think about the words. At some point, maybe one of those long walks would be done with dictation, and then you can really rack up the words that way. And I have to sleep each night, much like when I was taking exams in college. I learned very quickly that I am not good at pulling all-nighters. There's no point in me pulling an all-nighter. I will be much better if I can get 7-8 hours of sleep, and just what I've learned will sink in better. Creatively, I am much the same. I need my rest. So I would, you know, finish the day off, be in bed at 9, and then hope that I will be able to wake up at 5 the next morning and do it all again. How would you do this? I feel like it's not possible. Who has the stamina for this? How, I ask you. I mean, I know you're asking me, but I'm asking you, how? Why? That's actually my question. As I mentioned before, this video is being sponsored by Skillshare. So Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people. You can explore new skills, deepen existing passions, or just kind of get lost in your own creativity. I recently found out that Saba Tahir has a class on there called Writing Authentic Fiction, How to Build a Believable Character. And okay. I love Saba Tahir. I love following Saba Tahir anywhere. She uses these character interviews. So she actually records herself. This is an important part of it. And though I think the questions are kind of questions that I've seen before in character sheets, she also responds in the voice of the character, which I think is an element that I've always been missing from them. I kind of always wrote like bullet point lists or like, yes, this happened in this character's life. And I think that's why it's never worked for me before. So I'm very excited to try out her version of these character interviews and just see what I can uncover and how many scenes I might be able to create from these interviews. So I cannot recommend that class enough. Saba is amazing. Other classes I've taken recently include copywriting for beginners, how to write web copy that sells without being cheesy by Jessie Forrest, as well as Plants at Home, Uplift Your Spirit and Your Space by Christopher Griffin. I'm trying. Christopher even has a section about best beginner plants, so like, it has been perfect for me. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, so that just means that there's no ads. I've talked about my love for the transcript before, but it's my favorite thing to listen and watch the video that pops up on the side and then get to read along with the transcript. I think it just helps sink the learning into my brain more. And Skillshare is also always launching new premium classes, so you can stay focused and follow your creativity wherever it takes you. And it is less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. But the first 1,000 people to click my link down below will also get a free trial of Skillshare Premium, so I cannot recommend enough taking Saba's class. And thank you once again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. So this next question is one that I've often struggled with myself. This is a recurring theme where like really I just want y'all's answers to these, and hopefully we can like community build a comprehensive answer. I don't know if it's possible, but the person asked, how do you overcome crippling perfectionism? I've talked recently about Ellen from the Internet's video that I've loved, where her whole point is don't be afraid to be seen trying. And I think when I'm thinking of my own perfectionist ways, I do have some amount of perfectionism in that I want to make it the best that it can be. And I'll personally be hard on myself over very nitpicky things. So I do still see that aspect, but I think a big aspect of that, if I were to free myself of a community reception being poor, I think that would solve the worst of what manifests itself as perfectionism. So it's really that I'm afraid to not only be seen trying, but be seen failing by some people, or, you know, be seen failing by like 15% of people think what I put out there was total shit. But even if 85% of people like it, on our AuthorTube chat last night, we were talking about reviews and what 5-star versus 4-star versus 3-star meant. And even though 3-star was supposed to mean, you know, I like it, it's a fine book, average, good, you know, like it's fine. Becca was on there in the comments and she was saying how if there's anything under 5-star, it's like, I think they hated it, it was the worst book ever. Which of course is not initially how reviews are meant to be taken, but at the same time as an author, it's like a gut punch. Like anything, the answer is practice. So putting stuff out on a second pen name has been practice for me to get, you know, feedback that could be good, bad. It's just detached from Kate Cavanaugh. It's still feedback about me and my work. It's just a little bit detached, and that's nice. I am hopefully going to be putting out a short story collab soon where I show y'all what my 0 draft looks like, what my first, second, and then, you know, so on in the final draft. And it'll be scary to show people how bad I'm talking about my 0 draft is, but hopefully it'll all make sense. It'll make people feel better about what their 0 drafts might look like. So I'm making steps to be seen trying and be seen failing in parts. And I'm hoping that'll be the part of the perfectionism I can get over that doesn't require like a therapist intervention. But comment down below, let me know how you get over crippling perfectionism. Let me know if you're not entirely sure how you've done it, but you're a little bit better from where you were in the past. And maybe we can talk through like some of the things that have happened along the way and see if there's like a recurring theme. I don't know, yes. Swoop. Oh, that glare on the glasses though. That's not gonna work. Someone asked, do you enjoy death scenes? Huh, you monster? Yes, I love death scenes. I wouldn't have a project called Project Death if I didn't love death scenes. I am a monster. I can't tell you exactly why they're some of my favorite to write. I think there's, you know, an emotional note they usually tend to hit. There's a finality. There's a pressure and a tension that comes with a death scene oftentimes. And I like that. No, okay. The next question was, how do I find the balance between writing, reading, and other hobbies or obligations? And I've been trying to keep track of how many hours I'm writing so that I can reference back to the first question. But for the record, the past 2 days, I have not balanced them well. I had the AuthorTube chat and I was racing to finish the end of the book, which I had almost all 12 hours that I needed to read still. I will say that what often happens is that I have a dip in writing, and that's when I try to refill my creative well. So I try to go along with my natural sort of rhythm on those sorts of things. And I find that that does help me balance it. It's not like if you look at any individual day, it's balanced, but probably if you looked over the month, it would be pretty balanced. I've just accepted that there's going to be, peaks and valleys on this sort of thing for me. Along with other obligations, it's really just, even though I just talked about time management being poor this week, I do use my passion planner. I love my passion planner. It helps me get all of the very important things, the things that I can't move, I do a block around, and then things that are a little bit more flexible, but are still have like a set date or time, I draw a little arrow, and that's helped me visualize my day a lot so that I go into the day knowing like, oh, realistically, you're only gonna have like 3 hours today that you could possibly write in. So maybe lower your expectations on what your output's gonna be or something like that. In conclusion, I too am still trying to find balance. Also, my dog's being very cute. The other two are outside, but Duke is just right there, being a good little pepperoni. Yeah. The next question was, what was the benchmark you used when you could quit your corporate job and rely on writing? How should I calculate mine? Ooh, buddy, this is a tough one. We're all gonna have different answers. So I'm gonna set up the parameters so you can get a feel for what I did and why I did it. I'll link the card up above when I talked about that in more detail, but basically the things to keep in mind was I was quite young. I didn't have any kids. I was not married. So basically I had no responsibilities other than for myself, and I had no serious ongoing health problems. So I was able to forego, a company's health care. And thankfully I was young enough, I was able to be on my parents for a while. So that's the first thing. I had over a year of savings. So I'd gotten to a point where I personally was like, I'm gonna take this year. And I'm saying a year of savings. I mean, I could continue living my life exactly as I was living it in Dallas for an entire year, and I could stop my job and just try and make writing happen. But what ended up happening was my parents offered that I could move in with them and save my money for a little bit longer. And so that's what I ended up doing. Now, of course, moving itself costs money. And then I went on my road trip not long after that, so that cost money. But what I personally felt comfortable with was a whole year, and I was on the precipice of just being like, I have to quit. My mental state was not great where I was working. So if I was gonna give advice to anyone, God. This one's hard because all of our comfort levels are different. Some people really love the thrill of the sink or swim sort of thing and might do it on like a 6-month emergency fund. Some people might do it on a month-to-month thing. I think if I wasn't in such a bad mental state, I would have tried to increase my writing or start freelance writing while holding my corporate job at the same time. And then that way you can sort of get your toes in while still having a steady income. But obviously that's time dependent and that might not be possible for everyone. So I felt comfortable with the year. I basically was telling myself that you have a whole year to make this happen. And if it doesn't happen, back to the corporate world for you, kiddo. But if you were asking for a benchmark of did I make writing income before I quit, the answer was no. But please do comment down below if any of y'all have made a similar jump that I did. Maybe not even to writing, but like another field entirely. How did you come up with your personal benchmark? Is it bad if I use the same transition twice? We're gonna do it. Bet you had no idea that was coming. The final question that I want to talk about this time and I want y'all to answer to is, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? And my bonus follow-up question of that is, how often do you feel that way or get that sensation? For those of you that don't know, I'm going to take the Wikipedia definition of the imposter syndrome, which is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. V.E. Schwab has taken a picture of her book that I've seen recently, or her whole stack of books that she's published, and been like, every time I start a new one of these, there's some amount of fear and phrasing that happens in being like, how do you even create a book? And the answer is just, you know, ultimately doing it and just writing and doing what you know and what you love. But it's interesting that even someone like V.E. Schwab would have this moment of paralysis. I think art and creativity in general in this way is hard because it's with you every step of the way, every single part of the process. Impostor syndrome just feels like it's at the door. For those of y'all who've read Big Magic, she has this part where she talks about her fear being in the passenger seat, or for a while it had been in the driver's seat, and now she's trying to kick it back to the very back in the trunk. Like, it'll never not be with her, but her process is to eventually get it back there, not making decisions for her. And I think imposter syndrome is much the same way. It is going to be a constant companion because, you know, you feel that way while you're writing, and you feel that way while you're writing every book, while you're drafting, while you're editing. I can't do this even when I've done it before, or this won't be as good as what I've done before, no matter how hard I try. And I think that's the part about art when you're sharing it, because then you have the consumer or the public in mind, and what they might love is so different. And I think that can really play with the imposter syndrome and the psyche. Lots of huge successful authors where they had an incredible first book, you know, maybe that's their only incredible book. And that's really hard too, living up to these expectations that certain markets have set. And how do I deal as attempting to kick it to the backseat? And it is just by writing even when I'm scared and even when I don't think I'm good enough, which is most of the time. I think this also goes hand in hand with the perfectionism and being afraid to be seen trying or being afraid to be seen failing. It's hard to disentangle the thing that we're creating from our own self-worth sometimes, though it's very important to recognize that the thing you're creating is not your own self-worth. You know, like they're separate things entirely, and just because you create something that's not the best for everyone it's not a reflection on you as a person. Oof. The problem I found with imposter syndrome is that it tends to flare up at the most inopportune of times, right? Like, so it's always the part that I'm already struggling with. That's when imposter syndrome really kicks in. It's always when I'm like 65% of the way through the draft and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to fix this, or I don't know how I'm going to write this. This is always the part that I struggle with every time. And that's when imposter syndrome just like sneaks its way up the seat so it can get to the front and start driving. But there is some amount of confidence, and I've done it before, so I can do it again. I think for me personally, the imposter syndrome also plays into the 30,000 something subscribers and being scared to release the book. We talked about this a little bit before, the other question. There's an overinflated expectation when I'm really just the same person who was doing this when I had like 500 subscribers or when I had 50 subscribers. And so it scares me. Definitely feel like an imposter. And you know what? I'm gonna do it anyways. It's the year of finishing. Please let me know how you cope with it. I would love to know. But that is going to be it for me and my questions. Please do comment down below. Again, please let me know your answers to these questions as well. Let me know if you have any questions for the community, if you didn't get a chance to fill out the survey, if you want to add a question or you feel like it ties in really well to some of the questions I asked. I would love to know. I will be scouring the comments this time so that I can add them to the list. But thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and thank you especially to some of my new patrons this month. Matthew Berry, Elena Kresha, Jake No, Kat S, Scott Smith, and Charla Sipple. And I will see you all very soon with the new video. Bye. Up above where I talked about that. Up below. I will be scouring the comments.